I'm here this morning. It's exciting. I am over here at the Concerned Veterans for America's office with Russ Durstein. Understand I've been pronouncing his last name wrong for years. And Leslie Beecham. Leslie, you're the West Texas Field Director, I believe, and,
yes.
and Russ, your title is the Texas Coalitions Director, both for the Concerned Veterans for America. Y'all just had the neatest experience of having been invited to Washington, D.C. to, be with President Trump when he signs the VA bill. Wow, that was so cool. All right, there's a lot of story that led up to that moment. That doesn't just happen. So how about if we start with you, Russ? Can you how did the story begin that you ended up being invited to be there, but also to be standing amongst the honored guests there?
Well, and it is a long story. The exciting part was, just being told, but we've been working on this legislation ever since I've been on board, which has been almost 4 years ago. And the same month I came on board as a field director, Leslie was my first volunteer. So she started off as the very first volunteer out of San Angelo, and one of the first volunteers in the entire state of Texas for Concerned Veterans for America. And so we have chipped away at this legislation. We passed the VA Accountability Act last year, which was our first major piece of legislation. And then this last 12 months, we have called into constituents' offices to get them to contact their congressmen, their senators. It was long, hard work. And Leslie was the tip of the spear, and she leads the country in the amount of takes into constituents' offices to get them to call their congressman or their senator. It's why she was the top of the invite list to go watch this bill be signed.
Wow. All right. Well, how did you accomplish that, Leslie?
Well, like Russ was saying, I started volunteering with Concerned Veterans for America back in December of 2014, and I was able to come on board as a full-time member as a West Texas Field Director this last year in September, and I just love working for Concerned Veterans for America. It's my way of continuing service. I'm a retired Air Force, and this is my continuation of my military family with Concerned Veterans and also with the community. When I became a field director, I needed to build a community, and so I've been working with volunteers that Russ gave me when he moved up in the ranks, and also moving out into the community with Abilene, and we're going to be working into some other cities. But
awesome.
San Angelo and Abilene have been very integral with getting these calls through and getting the power behind the call. So
so what are you doing? You're calling into the community? Are you looking for veterans, finding veterans, and then having them in turn then call their legislators, or how does it work?
Well, we do make calls into constituents, and the first question we ask is if they're a veteran or a family member that we might thank for their service. And from that question, it doesn't end there. If we thank them for the service, if they are military or a family member, because family members also serve. Mm-hmm. And but if they're not, we even thank them for taking our call, because if they hang up on us or don't take the call, we can't continue with our question of, would you be willing to contact your representative to further this cause?
Exactly, and those phone calls ask questions about their opinion on VA choice, if they think that government-run health care works well for them and for veterans. The overwhelming majority say no. And once we realize that they understand that a veteran should have a choice between going to the VA or seeing a private doctor or any combination thereof, then Leslie's volunteers ask them if they'd like to share that opinion with their senator or congressman, and she's very good at getting volunteers excited to do the surveys and then patch them through to their elected officials to move the needle on this bill.
So, the bill that got signed, what are some of the details in it that, some of the different planks maybe that were accomplished by the work you did.
All right. I guess being the coalition's director, she wants to speak to the substance of the bill. The VA choice bill was first introduced a couple years ago, but it was very, very weak. And one of the main sticking points was that it was in guidelines and not part of standards. So much of what was being deterred by the VA was the ability to use it as designed because it was only a guideline. So you could have a choice when they gave you permission to have a choice. Mm-hmm. And so this Mission Act moved that into standards, and it made it much more black and white. This is when you can use it. And then there's so much more certainty when a veteran makes a choice to use his choice card as to what the rules are, what he can expect. The doctors can expect it to get paid. A lot of doctors would not see veterans with the old choice card because if the veteran didn't jump through every hoop just properly, then they were withholding payment. And then, you know, doctors of course can't continue to treat people without being paid. So it elevated the bar, it put more funding into it, made it permanent, and the main thing is moving it from guidelines to standards was very, very key.
So in the situation, what you were talking about is, even here in our community, here in San Angelo, now we don't have like a VA hospital or something. I've always understood that most of them have had to travel to like Big Spring or somewhere to be seen. So for our local community here, how is that going to change?
Well, we do have a VA clinic here in the area, but I did not have a very good experience, so I went back to the military with my TRICARE. And that was one of the things that when I was in Washington, D.C., the author of the bill that is a contractor, he was telling me that, or the person that helped put it together, not author it, but he was telling me that this is going to move choice like TRICARE. So you'll receive a list of doctors that you can choose from if you decide not to use the VA facilities. We do have VA facilities that are wonderful, and so for those veterans that want to keep continuing with the VA as their healthcare provider, that's their choice.
They can do it.
That's what this is for. So,
but this will prevent like the horror stories we've heard of people waiting months and months to get in, or just not being tended to.
Right, and that was the purpose of this, was to help those that are continuing on this waiting list that never ended, that should have been ended back in 2015 when we found out through the Phoenix debacle. So.
We really think a major contributing factor to so many veteran suicides is the long wait list while they're waiting to get psychiatric care. Anything that can help to shorten that line, we think VA Choice will do that, we believe will save lives.
That's huge. That's huge. So, so is the bill in effect now, or does it have a start date down the road?
It has a start date down the road. One of the things what they are doing immediately is getting it into standards. That doesn't happen overnight. It's in effect, but the ability to implement it is what's down the road. So those changes you won't see them today or tomorrow, but they will come very quickly. Will
they be like a September or January start, or have you heard?
I don't have date certains on those yet, but I can get that to you.
Okay. And so will a card or something be issued then that veterans will be able to show when they go to a doctor?
We need to find that out now. The VA Choice card does exist that way. If they're changing the card, what it looks like, if they'll make it more like a military ID, if it becomes more like an insurance policy, yet to be determined, but again, I can get that back to you.
Okay. Okay, you've achieved this. What's next on the horizon? Is there something else, another veteran issue in particular that y'all are working on?
Well, go ahead.
Well, this is not the end of working with the Mission Act to get it implemented. From a phone call that we were having yesterday, headquarters is still going to be, our CVA headquarters is still going to be working behind the scenes to make sure that this is implemented, and with the idea of how it was supposed to be implemented, and bring the bureaucracy out of it.
So, and sustained.
And sustained, right. Now, what we're going to be working on now is some thank you calls to those representatives that helped us in the beginning and stayed with us to move this needle. So that's what we're working on now, is those thank you calls.
Go ahead.
The overall mission of Freedom Partners, our AFP parent brand, and CVA, and what we do is to advance freedom. It is to promote a more free and open society. And a big part of that is what Leslie just mentioned. When legislators take a positive act to reduce the role of government in our lives and give us our freedom of choice back, we hold them accountable by pointing out that they didn't vote that way, or in this case, we call those and thank those. And we have constituents call and thank their elected official, because how do we expect our elected officials to do the right thing if we don't acknowledge they did the right thing?
Sure.
If we don't reward them with the ballot box, don't reward them with thank yous. So influencing them to do the right thing is one thing. Following that up is another, and that's a big part of what we do at Concerned Veterans for America.
Well, I have to ask, how did you get or word of the invitation to go to Washington, D.C.?
Well, we were first nominated and then received an email that had the actual invitation and how to apply for the security to go through and everything. And I was actually shaking when I got the email because I couldn't believe it. So I think I texted or called Russ just to say, is this for real? And
we knew we were on the short list, and then when she was the one chosen, the emotion in her voice was, was really,
I can imagine.
She was shaking.
Yeah.
It was so great. So it was neat.
Well,
Very
awesome.
exciting.
Well, tell me about the experience.
It was overwhelming. Hard to put into words, but from start to finish, I probably had a smile on my face the whole time that would reach from West Coast to East Coast. So, but I had the support of our Texas team behind me the whole time. I was able to be on the flight that took them to their to our regional conference that was happening at the same time, and our state director Jerome Greener gave me confident words and encouragement from that time, leaving them at National and going on to DC.
You weren't nervous standing next to the President of the United States or anything? You
no,
didn't need any.
Did you get a photo with him? Or the group with?
There's a group photo. I wasn't able to get close to him, but I was on the stage. That was very close, and I saw where he came from. We were in the Rose Garden, up on stage.
And you looked beautiful. I was just shocked when I went, oh, that's Leslie, and jumped up and took a picture of my television with you.
Who did you get to shake hands with?
I was able to shake hands with the Vice President.
Oh, very good.
As he came up on stage, I just softly said, "Thank you for your service, sir," and he turned around and said, "No, thank you for your service," and shook my hand.
Wow.
So the next best thing was the Vice President, and he's a very gracious man and very kind. And so I was also standing by some congressmen and women, and got to speak with them and about their things that have happened to their constituents in their areas with the VA and the veterans. And so it was a great experience the whole time. And I need to also thank our executive director, Dan Caldwell, for even submitting us and taking care of me while I was there, and the rest of the team that was at the headquarters there in CVA.
That's awesome. Well, it was a great honor having a San Angeloan up there standing with the president. That does not happen very often at all. Any final thoughts on this milestone?
We have a lot of work left to do. And the VA is the second largest bureaucracy in the United States, and seeing civil service reform last year being passed through VA accountability, introducing choice now, being able to modernize medical records within the VA, There's several things that we need to get the VA from out of the 20th century into the 21st century. There's a lot of work left to be done, but the thing that's encouraging is if citizens can make this happen, we can do a lot to roll back the overwhelming oppression that a centralized government can be when it gets too big, too expensive, and too much regulation. So there's hope for the future because we can look at what we've got done and know a lot of work to do, but it can be accomplished.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations to both
Thank
of you. And it's a pleasure being with you here this morning. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Kat.